But healing doesn't require you to stop wanting connection. We're hardwired for connection. It just asks you to remain connected to yourself while you want it. It is absolutely possible to love someone and still tell the truth. You can want reassurance and still honor your boundaries. You can be afraid of losing someone and still refuse to get smaller in order to keep them. You can stay one foot on your own pillow.
Welcome to Grow with Robin Breckenridge, a podcast about stepping into the most fully expressed, aligned, and conscious version of yourself. Here, we dive into the real work of personal growth, establishing boundaries, understanding your patterns, building self-trust, healing emotional wounds, and creating relationships that feel safe, authentic, and fulfilling. I'm Robin, a life and relationship coach, and in each episode, we'll explore the tools, insights, and conversations that will help you not just improve your life and relationships, but truly transform them. You don't have to just go through it. Let's grow through it, and let's do it together.
So we're 2 episodes down in our codependency series. How's everybody feeling? I know that after last week's episode, I was like, oh, I think my overfunctioning might be at the core of every complaint I have and anything I don't like in my relationships. So that's a fun awareness, right? But if there's awareness and accountability, then there's change. And I have been on a journey myself around the concepts of overfunctioning and codependency, and the journey continues. So I'm hoping that some of you have also had some awarenesses, that there's been some mirrors that have come up. And I think the good news about realizing that some of the consequences that you're experiencing come from the way you're showing up or your behavior is we have way more power to change it. So per usual, I'm going to dust off and get back up, and I'm going to keep working on honoring myself, honoring my bandwidth, and showing up in a way that also factors in my capacity, my bandwidth, and my well-being. So on that note, let's continue to talk about self-abandonment. I know we've talked a lot about it on this podcast. I still get a lot of questions and sometimes some confusion around what is self-abandonment, what is it not? And I think there's confusion because it's sneaky. I think that sometimes we're abandoning or neglecting ourselves in ways that we're not even aware of. And because codependency as a definition is chronic self-neglect, let's talk about more of the ways that we can neglect and abandon ourselves. And I believe it's confusing because there are so many ways that we can neglect ourselves in relationships that don't seem obvious at first. Sometimes we neglect ourselves by getting small. We stop saying what we really think. We make the other person's needs more important than our own. We prioritize being chosen, loved, understood, or approved of. Sometimes we neglect ourselves by disconnecting. We push down what we feel. We don't ask for what we need. We isolate, numb, intellectualize our feelings, or pretend like we don't care. I know there was a time where I caught myself walking around my house and something was bothering me. And of course, I was observing the way I was interacting with it. And I just kept saying, well, I don't care. I don't care. I don't give a F. I don't care. I don't care. And then I stopped myself and I went, what if I do care? And then I had this overwhelming emotion that was like, oh my God, I care so much. And I didn't realize that that protector was even up. It really felt true. It felt like I didn't care. But because it kept coming up so much, I was like, maybe I do care. I keep saying I don't care over and over again. Didn't even know. So when we lack the ability to get curious, then our feelings, our thoughts feel like truth. And no matter how you neglect yourself, all of those patterns have something in common. At some point, we learn that being fully ourselves could threaten the connection. Remember, as children, we need connection from our caregivers. It's a basic need. We also need connection with ourselves. We need access to our feelings, our needs, our voice, our boundaries, and our truth. But for most of us, we learned that we could not have both. We learned that in order to stay connected, it might require us to become easier, quieter, more helpful, less emotional, less needy, or less honest. So of course, we adapted. Some of us learned to prioritize connection over protecting ourselves. Some of us learned to prioritize protecting ourselves over the connection. And some of us became ninjas who do both. And of course, we're on episode 66 now. We know those patterns helped us survive then, but in adulthood, they became chronic self-neglect. We kept leaving parts of ourselves behind every time a relationship activated fear. So the focus for today's episode is I want you guys to start questioning, what do you neglect in yourself when you're afraid of losing someone, being hurt, being rejected, or being fully seen? And what might it look like to stay with yourself instead? So I can't really talk about this topic without bringing up attachment. As children, we have a need for attachment and connection. Attachment is the connection we have with the people we depend on. We need their care, attention, protection, and presence to survive and develop. But we also have this need for authenticity. Authenticity is our connection with ourselves. It is our ability to know what we feel, recognize what we need, use our voice, and remain connected to what is true for us. In an ideal and healthy environment, a child does not have to choose between those two things. They can be connected to their caregiver and connected to themselves. They can feel angry and still be loved. They can be sad without being treated like a burden. They can say no and remain safe in the relationship. They can have needs without being made responsible for how the adult feels about those needs. Their authenticity does not threaten the connection. But so many of us learned that certain parts of us are less welcome than others. It could be true that your feelings overwhelmed the adults around you, or that your anger was punished, your sadness was ignored, or your needs were treated as inconvenient, dramatic, or just too much. Maybe you received warmth and praise when you were helpful, successful, quiet, or easy. Maybe you became responsible for keeping the peace or helping an adult regulate their emotions. Perhaps love was present, but it was inconsistent. You never fully knew which version of your caregiver you were going to get. And of course, as kids, we can't take a step back and say, you know what, this relationship doesn't feel emotionally safe, so I'm going to create some distance here. The child needs the caregiver to survive. So when the connection with the caregiver seems to require disconnection from self, the child will always protect and prioritize the connection with the caregiver. And that's when the child stops expressing certain feelings. They take up less space. They learn to read the room before they speak. They become deeply attuned to what everyone else needs while losing contact with their own. That child may become quiet or helpful, high achieving, or emotionally independent. They will become whoever they need to be in order to keep the connection. And of course, this all happens way before the child has any language for it or any awareness of it happening. They are simply adapting to survive. And then we grow up, and the original environment may be gone, but the nervous system can continue using the same strategies. So someone doesn't respond to a text in a certain amount of time, and that feels like abandonment. Someone you love is disappointed, and that feels like rejection. A difficult conversation can feel like it will end the relationship. Or emotional closeness can feel like a loss of freedom or control. And of course, the body responds before the conscious mind has figured out what is happening in its current reality. And then before we know it, we are choosing between connection and authenticity again. So reminder, your nervous system never lies to you. It's communicating that something feels threatening. The activation is real. The racing thoughts, the tightness in your chest, the urge to chase, shut down, prove, leave, or numb is real. But the meaning we assign to that activation still needs curiosity. Sometimes the threat is present in your environment. The person might be inconsistent, emotionally unavailable, disrespecting a boundary, or communicating in a way that doesn't feel safe. And your nervous system may be accurately identifying in the present moment something that deserves your attention. And at other times, something in the present moment is touching something old. A person needing space may activate an old fear of abandonment. A request for a conversation may activate an old fear of criticism or control. Someone being disappointed may remind you of what it felt like when disappointment led to withdrawal, punishment, or emotional distance. And sometimes both are happening. There may be something real in the present, and the present experience may also be connected to an older wound. The answer is never to dismiss the nervous system. The answer is to become more curious about what it is communicating, because attachment patterns don't just show us how we relate to other people. They show us what happens to our relationship with ourselves when we are afraid. Now, for those of us that learn to prioritize connection over protecting ourselves, when a relationship feels uncertain, our attention moves away from ourselves and towards the other person. In the pillow analogy, that's when we leave our pillow and go on to someone else's pillow. We begin trying to figure out what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and whether or not they're still choosing us. Now remember, in the pillow analogy, your pillow holds your feelings, needs, boundaries, values, responsibility, choices, and the other person's pillow holds theirs. The middle pillow holds what belongs to the relationship and needs to be addressed together. But when we prioritize the connection over protecting ourselves, we will leave our pillow. We become consumed with what is happening on the other person's pillow. Why are they being distant? What do they really mean with that message? Are they upset? Did I do something wrong? Are they interested in someone else? Are they losing interest in me? The list goes on and on. Then we begin investigating. We reread messages, replay conversations, call 5 of our closest friends to see what they think. We monitor the other person's mood and energy, and we try to collect as much information as we can to get the uncertainty to go away. We may also begin to get smaller. We hide what we want to say, abandon a boundary because we're afraid it will cost us the relationship. We prioritize the other person's comfort over our own truth. And we become more focused on being chosen than on deciding whether this relationship is healthy for us. We may even place the other person on a pedestal and begin seeing them as more valuable, more desirable, and more important than we see ourselves. And then that fight response comes out even stronger. We start proving. We prove that we are understanding, patient, that we're different from everybody else, that we can love them through whatever they're going through. We may call that love, but the vibration that's underneath that is fear. The fear that if we stop trying, the relationship will end. When we are in an activated anxious attachment wound, we focus on the other person and avoid ourselves. When I'm consumed with whether or not you want me and want to pick me, I don't have to ask whether I even want this relationship. If I'm so busy investigating your feelings, I don't have to sit with mine. And when I'm so focused on trying to get you to change, I avoid deciding what I will do if you remain exactly how you are. And when I'm focused on proving my value, I don't have to face the grief of being with someone who doesn't value me. Connection becomes the priority and protection slowly disappears. We stop protecting our dignity, our time, our emotional well-being, and we stop protecting the parts of ourselves that already know something is wrong. And unfortunately, We stay because losing the person feels way more frightening than losing ourselves. We lost ourselves a long time ago. We know how to live like that, but that is chronic self-neglect. You will continue leaving your own pillow because keeping the connection feels more urgent than protecting what is true for you. Again, we disconnected from our truth a long time ago. We are very well versed in living in a way that is disconnected from our truth. But healing doesn't require you to stop wanting connection. We're hardwired for connection. It just asks you to remain connected to yourself while you want it. It is absolutely possible to love someone and still tell the truth. You can want reassurance and still honor your boundaries. You can be afraid of losing someone and still refuse to get smaller in order to keep them. You can stay one foot on your own pillow. Now, some of us learn to prioritize protecting ourselves over a connection. So when something becomes emotionally uncomfortable, we move away from it, not towards it. We shut down, we stop talking, we push down what we feel. We tell ourselves we don't need anyone. We isolate, intellectualize our feelings, overwork, or find something that numbs the discomfort. And the strategy might be simple. If I don't need anyone, no one can disappoint me. If I stay in control, no one can control me. If I leave first, I won't be abandoned. One of my favorite prior strategies, abandon before you get abandoned. Love that one. If I never let you fully see who I am, you can't reject me for who I am. And I'll tell you what, these patterns can look really strong from the outside. This person may appear calm, independent, and in control, and sometimes unaffected. But there's a big difference between peace and disconnection. There is a difference between taking space and disappearing. And there is a difference between healthy independence and never allowing yourself to receive support. When protection becomes the priority, connection is sacrificed. The very thing we're all hardwired for and all need. And it's not just the connection with other people that gets lost. It's also your connection with yourself. If you continually push down what you feel, eventually you aren't going to know what you're feeling. If you never ask for what you need, eventually you may believe you don't even have needs. And if you avoid every vulnerable conversation, you never learn that you can survive being known and letting people get close to you. And it's very common that some of us choose emotionally unavailable relationships because those relationships offer the feeling of connection, but without vulnerability and intimacy. You can love someone from a distance, fantasize, feel the intensity, remain invested while protecting yourself from fully being seen or vulnerable. And it's true, protection can prevent pain, but it can also prevent love from reaching you too. Chronic self-neglect can also look like denying your own need for connection. It can look like pretending you don't care when you do, or refusing to use your voice because asking for something creates too much vulnerability. It can look like leaving a relationship emotionally before the other person has the chance to disappoint you. Healing looks like learning how to protect yourself while staying emotionally connected to yourself. You can ask for space and communicate that you intend to return. You can take time to regulate yourself or take time for yourself and acknowledge that the relationship matters and is still a priority. You can admit that you care. You can ask for what you need, and you can allow someone safe to show up and support you. Protection and connection can exist together. And some of us do a dance where we move between prioritizing connection and prioritizing protection. We want closeness, but closeness also feels dangerous. When someone moves away and gets kind of too far away from us, we can feel abandoned and start to chase. And maybe when they feel too close, we can feel engulfed, enmeshed, and overwhelmed. So we can't let the relationship get too close either. And that creates a push-pull dynamic. We move towards the relationship. We lean towards vulnerability. Fear comes up. and we create distance. And the distance gives us relief for that moment, but then the distance becomes frightening and we begin reaching again. One part of us says, please don't leave me. And another part says, please do not get close enough to hurt me. And both parts are trying to protect us. Neither part feels completely safe. Both parts are trying to protect us, and neither part feels completely safe. And that dance can create a tremendous amount of confusion. One day you might feel sure about the relationship, and the next day you're questioning it. You stay because leaving feels unbearable, and you pull away because staying feels dangerous. You remain caught between two fears. And if we get curious, the confusion sometimes reflects something real. Maybe the relationship is inconsistent. Maybe the person is giving mixed messages. There might be legitimate reasons why you don't feel safe moving closer or farther away. But if we tap into our truth, there's a high likelihood we already have the information. We remain confused because clarity would require a painful decision. Even confusion can become a form of protection. As long as I'm confused, I don't have to fully stay and I don't have to leave. I don't have to set a boundary. I don't have to let myself be fully known. I can keep circling, keep doing this push-pull dance. But staying in confusion is also self-neglect. So what did you give up in order to remain connected or protected in your relationships growing up? Did you give up your needs? Did you stop using your voice? Did you disconnect from anger because anger threatened the relationship? Did you give up the soft part of you because vulnerability didn't feel safe? Did you stop trusting your body and your knowing? Did you give up saying no? Maybe you became so focused on protecting yourself that you lost your ability to receive. All of these were at one time protective and are now forms of chronic self-neglect. What we didn't know then, but we know now, is that we don't have to treat connection and protection as opposites. Healthy relationships require both. I need to be able to trust you, love you, and allow you to know me. I also need to remain connected to my boundaries, values, feelings, and well-being. I can be vulnerable and still have limits. Boundary pyramid. I can love you without making you responsible for my worth. I can give you space and still recognize that chronic emotional distance does not work for me. I can ask for reassurance and not be dependent on it. I can ask for reassurance and not have that be the only way I feel good about myself. I can protect myself and remain open to love. Healthy attachment and healthy relationships make room for authenticity. So how do we shift out of these patterns? Well, here's the easy and not so easy answer. We have to make a different choice. If someone you care about becomes distant and your anxious part wants to send several messages, explain yourself, or investigate what's happening, the pause allows you to return to your own pillow. You can recognize that the distance is activating you and remind yourself that wanting clarity does not require chasing it. It might sound something like, I've noticed some distance between us. Is something happening that we need to talk about? You are reaching for connection while remaining connected to yourself. And if your avoidant attachment wound is more activated, maybe your partner wants to have an emotional conversation and you feel overwhelmed. Historically, maybe that part of you would shut down or leave. But the pause allows you to honor your need for regulation while staying connected to the relationship. You might say something like, I do want to have this conversation, but I am feeling overwhelmed right now and it doesn't feel like the right time. I need some time to regulate and I would love to come back to this conversation tomorrow. Then you're creating space without disappearing. And if you feel like you're stuck in that push-pull, like one part of you is terrified of losing your relationship while the other part is terrified of being inside of it, your conscious adult can acknowledge both. And it might sound something like, hey, one part of me wants to hold on and another part wants to run. I'm going to listen to both before I make a decision. Ask yourself, what do I need in order to feel connected and protected in this relationship. And then, of course, we always have to discern, does this relationship have the capacity to even offer me that? So this week, or the next time you become activated in a relationship, notice which direction you move. Do you prioritize connection and lose contact with the part of you that protects yourself? Do you prioritize protecting yourself and disconnect from the connection of the relationship? Or do you move between both and become stuck? Remember, my favorite mental health intervention of all time, the pause. Ask yourself what feels threatening and what you fear is about to happen. Then ask yourself, what would staying connected to myself look like right now? It might mean you reach out without chasing, or you ask for space while remaining connected and in communication with that person. It may look like the brave action of expressing a need. It might mean allowing yourself to be known by someone who has shown you they are safe. And of course, we have the boundary pyramid that helps us discern who's safe in that trust category or not. We now have an opportunity to create different experiences in our lives. We can remain authentic while connected to another person. We can protect ourselves while staying open to a relationship, love, and connection. We can listen to our nervous system and allow our conscious adult to choose what happens next. We can show up for our scared parts of self. We can show up for our scared parts of self and see that they're scared, understand why, and let them know that we are here no matter what. You absolutely deserve relationships where authenticity and connection exist together. Your needs can be present without threatening. You can have needs in a relationship. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes we will bring our needs to someone and it will end a relationship. But if you having needs ends a relationship, that was never an aligned relationship to begin with. Closeness can exist without requiring you to disappear. And protection can exist without requiring you to be alone and disconnected from others. Guess what? You are here listening to this podcast week after week because there is something in you that loves you. There is something in you that knows you deserve more. And there is something in you that invests in working on yourself. So as always, I'm so grateful for you being here, for every person that is investing in themselves. This is possible. I'm going to keep going. You keep going too. I'll see you next week.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for being here and for doing this work. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Come connect with me over on TikTok at Robin Breckenridge or Instagram at Coach with Robin, where I share even more insights, tools, and conversations around boundaries, self-trust, relational healing, and so much more. And just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and personal growth purposes only. The insights and tools I share are based on my experience as a life and relationship coach and are meant for general guidance. Each person's story is unique, and the nuances of individual experiences can't always be addressed in this format. What's shared here may not be applicable to every situation, especially those involving abuse, oppression, severe mental illness, or systematic harm. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please seek support from a qualified mental health professional or emergency resources. Thank you for listening and for showing up for yourself in this way. Take care, and I'll see you next time.